We are a certain breed. We go towards danger. We face danger. You have to be a little bit different to do that. I think we all know that. But it also has an effect on us throughout our career. I'm more resilient. I know I could get through things. I know I could manage a 24-hour shift. But I also know that I wake up in the middle of the night. I know that sometimes I don't fall asleep. I know I have memories that most people would struggle with on a daily basis. I could file those. Some people can't. The fire service has been around for 150 plus years. When do we as a organization, as a whole, as all 1.2 million active and probably 600,000 retirees come together to address this in a positive way for the people now, the people that have retired, and the people that are going to take our place in the present and in the future?
One firefighter suicide is too many. One firefighter suicide disrupts an entire department and often an entire community. And therefore, we need to raise it as a priority.
We take care of everyone else. That's what we do. That's what we like to do. We strap our gear on and we go to work and we take care of the community. We take care of family. We take care of friends. We do not want to be a burden to anyone else. And when we get injured on the job or we are having a difficult time, we don't ask for help. That needs to stop. My concern is not only with the active members, but retirees. When we leave this service, we lose a lot of those protective factors. We have to develop programs not only for our active members, and when I say programs, emotional support programs, but for our retirees and our families.
So both of you have 30 plus years in this field. When you look back at like the beginning of your career, what is different in the areas of behavioral health and suicide today versus then?
Well, when I first came on, we used to watch someone, in the throes of alcohol. We would enable them. We would watch them lose their families, lose their house, eventually their health, their job, and their lives.
And just let it go.
And just let it go, because we enable them to death. So that has changed. That has changed drastically. We don't allow that to happen anymore. So we've come a long way. I think we have a long way to go. Being here with the two of you is a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, ditto. We enabled, we allowed, we swept it under the rug, we looked the other way, and now we address it. And thanks to people like the NFFF and the IFF and other organizations and creating peer support and awareness, we have people that are willing to step in and ask the tough questions and ask people how they're doing.
The next generation, Dan, should not have to go through what we went through.
Right. And then to include the family too, is it's not just us, right? It's our spouses and our children, because that has an effect on us when we go to work. How do you stay mentally ready when you have a sick child or sick spouse at home, whether it be cancer or mental illness themselves, and then you try to focus and you get stressed out and then you have then poor coping skills.
What I'm seeing is it's the storytellers that are kind of cracking this open, like people who've lived through either a loss or their own challenges and said, this needs to be done differently. No more life to lose here. The storytellers, for me, when I hear them, it makes it real. It's not just a data point. It's not just some kind of, debate we're having on whether or not the statistics are real or not. It's like that human who's sitting right next to me, someone I've known, someone I care about.
I always say the peers that we have in our department are experts, but they're experts at life. Who had a suicide of a family member? Who had a kid with leukemia? Who has a kid with autism? Who has a wife that is suffering from breast cancer? Their stories are powerful, and their connection with other members that are struggling with the same issues is also powerful and healing. So, those stories are healthy and helpful.
Like all marriages, we concentrated on the family and the kids and the business. Chip served as a professional firefighter for 26 years. moved up the ranks to battalion chief, and then eventually became an assistant chief. In 2012, he retired, and unbeknownst to us, in his retirement speech to the commission and all of the members of the fire department that attended, he spoke very passionately about his career and alluded to what he always called his demons. Chip broke down and actually cried at that speech and said, you see the body bags with the babies in it, and you see the grandmother who dies and in the fire with her grandchildren because they can't get out. And nobody called attention to that. That was in 2012. He made this beautiful, eloquent speech and retired, and that was it. In 2017, we were at a family event, big old Catholic family for the 4th of July. We're sitting on a bench swing, watching all of the grandkids, my nieces and nephews in the family. And he said, we have such a great life. And we're holding my first grandbaby while we're swinging. And I just remembered that like it was yesterday. That night, he went home and said, I'm not going to bed yet. I'm gonna sit up for a little bit. So I went to bed, and he ended up attempting suicide. And for whatever reason, he stopped himself. Drove to the University of Cincinnati, admitted himself to the emergency room. I get a phone call, and he said, don't panic, I'm safe. I'm at UC. They've admitted me to the psych unit. I was suicidal. And I said, I'm coming. I'll be right there. And he said, you can't come. They won't let you in. Stay there, hold down the fort, and I'll be fine. I'll be back in touch. So holding it all together through a work day, it's crazy. I've got to finish my shift and worry about him and not let anybody know that this is going on. And we met with a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist said, you guys have a guardian angel sitting on your shoulder. And he said, we've got this. We're gonna help you, and we're gonna get it all together. Chip was very well read, and he knew that first responders were susceptible to post-traumatic stress. He told the psychiatrist that. I heard him tell multiple clinicians that. And instead of connecting us with specialists that treat that, he was placed in an alcohol addiction class, recommended Alcoholics Anonymous, and he was discharged. So he was placed in a 9-week program. He went Monday through Thursday, 6 to 9, every night, didn't miss. He took the meds they offered. He quit alcohol cold turkey, finished the entire 9-week session. We celebrated our 31st wedding anniversary, and within 10 days of his discharge from the outpatient rehab, he was gone.
Most of the people that I've learned that have been in my department and people that I know, including my father, kept it to themselves. Didn't speak of it, and didn't give those external cues that they were thinking or contemplating suicide, which is very frustrating. So then, how in the world are we going to learn whether or not somebody is struggling? I've seen people come in that were a little bit disheveled, a little bit tired, acting a little bit different, maybe more angry, and you ask them how they're doing, but you really don't think about suicide. Not with the greatest job in the world, but you got to be able to ask that question. Not just how are you doing, but in that conversation, if you do have that thought that that person is suicidal, you have to ask them, are you thinking of killing yourself? And then if you ask that question, and I've had that answered yes, You have to ask the follow-up questions. Do you have a plan? Have you attempted before?
It's really important also to model using the word suicide or kill yourself as a matter-of-fact thing. This is just something we talk about. It's a health issue. It's a challenge we all face together, rather than dancing around it like, asking people if they're going to harm themselves or if they're going to do anything crazy, or that kind of stigmatized language or indirect questioning isn't the same as asking it in a direct way. When you have a conversation about suicide in particular, you might get a whole range of responses, and sometimes it's a little hard to make sense of them. So you might get a no, I'm not thinking about suicide. And in that moment, no is the answer. A no is probably a no if they're thankful that you asked. No, I'm not there yet, but thanks for checking in on me. A no is probably a no if they will continue to talk about their problems. No, I'm not there yet, but it's been really hard. And a no is probably a no if they're open to resources. Okay, no, I'm not there yet, but it's been really hard and I'd love your help figuring this out. Those are pretty trustworthy no answers. Then we got a whole bunch of stuff in the middle. We've got a no, but it's unclear. So they can't meet your eyes, they're kind of fidgety and agitated. And you just reflect back. I know you're telling me you're fine, but everything in your body is telling me you're really uncomfortable. Can we talk about that? What does that mean for you? Or this is what everybody fears. It's a no and a slam and a rant and a meh. Everybody worries about that response because maybe you've offended somebody. And I always say, let's just backtrack and look at that conversation. You came in with, I care about you, I've noticed, I'm worried, I have some ideas, I'm wondering, gentle, empathic, collaborative conversation. And they flew off the handle. It's not about you. It's about them. It's about their fears and maybe a bad experience they've had before. So again, you just reflect back. I asked you a direct question of suicide, and you kind of flew off the handle on me. I'm just wondering what that's about. And sometimes you're going to get a non-answer. You're going to get, no, not really. Well, go with the not really. Can you tell me about the not really part of I'm not really suicidal? And sometimes you're going to get a yes. And when you get a yes, the first thing out of your mouth should be thank you. Yes, I'm thinking about suicide. You know what? Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me. Thank you for trusting me. When you come at the conversation with gratitude, that's going to be very uplifting for the conversation. So first thing out of your mouth, gratitude. Second thing out of your mouth, I got your back. I'm going to persist with you. I'm in this with you. We're going to figure it out together. Third thing out of your mouth, I got some ideas. Hope in the darkness. Persist through those options together. That's a really great way to go.
I don't sleep very well. For whatever reason, that night, I was sleeping soundly. So soundly, I didn't hear my cell phone go off, the home phone go off. It was my wife that actually received the phone call. And it was a friend of ours, Kyle, and he called me with the bad news. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. Our captain had committed suicide. I don't even know what route I took to get there, probably the quickest one that I could get there. And of course show up and there's everybody at the table with his helmet in the middle, and it was terrible. Like Cap was a pretty good friend, mentor, but first and foremost, captain, at work. We spent a lot of time hunting, fishing, and we had a love for Chevy vehicles, so we worked on his Chevelle 1971 Super Sport. Came out to be a beautiful car when we were done with it. Looking back at the time, I didn't think he would be the type of person to commit suicide. He was more of a rock. He was as tall as he was wide as he was dense, if that explains anything about the man. He was rather large. And so, we looked to him that way, and he was very technical. He was a great captain, believed in his company, his crew, and his truck, and he was very proud of it. I'm pretty sure most of them, put that facade on. We had to go to work. We have our job to do. Many of us suffer in silence, don't say anything. And that probably leads to not sleeping, doing the things that aren't really good for you, maybe self-medicating and those kind of things. But there was a lot of just those days where it was sad. And, you know, we still had to carry on business. I think I took a couple days off to help the family out. But that was about it. But coming back was very different because, you know, we had to get a new captain eventually. And that was always going to be tough. Yeah, I think that's one of the bigger regrets is not recognizing some of the signs a lot earlier. We educate ourselves a lot of times and train ourselves to mitigate these crises and emergencies. And this is a crisis or an emergency within our own. And we need to educate ourselves and train on these subjects in order to make ourselves better. The change I'd like to see is that we discuss these issues up front and it be as easy as getting a cup of coffee in the morning. I've used that analogy from day one. It needs to be that easy. You need to be able to, or I need to be able to come in and just say, hey man, today's not a great day for me. Here are the reasons why, with, you know, nothing there in the negative, everything just positive, you know, try to help and assist individuals with, you know, whatever's going on, you know, and maybe you need a day off. Maybe you need to take some time. Maybe we need to go talk about this. Maybe you need to talk about this with somebody else. My wife absolutely helped me get through this. She's a rock. She deals with her own issues and was there for me, listened. Also asked those hard questions. Are you doing okay? Fearing maybe I answered no.
I remember the seventh suicide death at the Denver Fire Department, and they were just beside themselves. It was a beloved captain and very close to a number of firefighters, and they were not going to stop until they worked some kind of solution out to doing something different. And it was their grief that pushed them forward. And I feel like that's kind of where the field is at now. Like, people are tired of the grief, and they wanna prevent this kind of tragedy. And you know, it has kind of busted the doors open, but I think there's some readiness that maybe wasn't there before.
I think if we build our programs focused on suicide alone, that we're missing the boat. I think we have to build our mental and emotional health programs on dealing with the issues that firefighters deal with every day. You know, dealing with those tough calls, dealing with marital issues, dealing with having a sick kid, dealing with depression, substance abuse. Let's build our programs with everything that we see in the fire service, and we'll reduce suicide. If you look at the warning signs of suicide, do you have higher rates of PTSD, depression, substance abuse? Firefighters check all the boxes. Firefighters have all those issues that they're dealing with. In almost every case of suicide that I've seen, the person has been isolated. And they've disconnected from their family, they've disconnected from other firefighters. Those people are at high risk. Reach out to them. Make sure that they're doing okay.
So my dad, Tim Perry, he was a super cool guy, and like the best day ever, of course, in grade school was like when he'd bring the fire truck to school, and like you were like the cool kid in school. He worked on his cars a lot, and then he was just super helpful and always help anybody he could. Mom always says that I have all the helpful qualities that he had and all the good things because I just always want to stop and help people. I was at a track meet my senior year of high school, and he was supposed to come, and then he never showed up. After that, I went home and like, didn't think anything up because we didn't live together. I lived with my mom. She came in, and then Grandma called and was like, yeah, I just found him laying on the floor. So at first, it was considered that he just overdosed on pills from like a wrongful prescription. But then it eventually came out that it was suicide. I mean, I kind of knew because he'd struggled with depression for a while. So I don't know what happened, but then something else happened where he just wasn't sleeping anymore. He slept about 2 hours a night, and then it just fell apart, and the medication wasn't working. So he already wasn't like a big medication guy. Like, he didn't like taking medicine and stuff, which like I feel like most of the firefighters are like that. Like, they're helping other people, so they think that they don't need to help themselves. So then, in reality, they do, because like they're not Superman. I mean, they're normal people. So he eventually got put on I don't know if it's medical leave. He also got hurt a year before riding dirt bikes with me. He tore his rotator cuff. So it eventually was the point, like if you're off anymore, like you're not gonna be, like you're done being a firefighter. So then I feel like when he got hurt riding dirt bikes, it kind of probably really contributed to his fear of maybe not being a firefighter anymore. And that could have caused him, just pushed him over the edge, because he couldn't see himself doing anything else, because he's been doing it for 25 years, his whole life. And I wonder if that could have like contributed to the fact of why he did it, or why he was so scared.
There's a cumulative effect of stressors that happen on the job, both physically and mentally and emotionally. We have to have a place for us to share that information. We come home from a day of work, and I could tell you for myself is that there are 15 things in my head, many of them that I don't share with my wife and with my kids. And then I go on to do the next thing, and then it builds up the next day. What do we do with that? How do we self-care? How do we manage that? The stigma throughout my career is that those people that are broken, different, call out for help, struggle, may be a sign of weakness. But the reality is that what we've learned is that we're all the same. We all struggle. But what we want to make sure nowadays is that we don't struggle in silence.
I'll never forget, we went to a particularly bad fire, and we were back at the station, and one of the firefighters noticed that I was not doing well, and I was cutting onions, making the meal, and he came over to me and he said, "Frank, you start that fire?" And I said, "No." He said, "You do the best you could?" And I said, "Yeah, Tommy, I did the best I could." He said, "Then cut the onions." We recognize when others were not doing well. I don't know if that's the same today. Many firefighters, get back in the station, they get on their personal devices and they go into the corners, and we're not as connected as we used to be. And I think, I don't know how to change that, but I think that protected us in the past.
As firemen, we do see a lot of trauma. We see things that normal people don't see. Any uniformed personnel, we put ourselves in the line of work to see things that most normal people don't. When they have a bad day, they call us. Working in EMS, and I worked for an organization that was probably a toxic organization, lots of negativity, lots of cynicism. And as a teenager, I didn't know any better. I thought it was funny, I thought I enjoyed it, but I didn't realize how toxic it was. And that led to a lot of negativity in my life, on top of seeing things that a teenager shouldn't normally see. 18, 19, 20 years old, I was, working cardiac arrest, pronouncing people deceased, seeing terrible things and smells that most kids and teenagers wouldn't see or shouldn't even see. And for that, it finally, the top blew off, the cup overfilled, however you want to put it. It led to me attempting to take my own life. My suicide attempt was very impulsive. I wanted just to stop being negative. I wanted to stop living that life. And the only way I knew that was like to end my life. I didn't think about the others. I didn't think about my family or any loved ones, or didn't even think about dying and the fact of I just wanted this to end. So it was, you know, it was very impulsive. And while there's probably warning signs of my behavior and negativity and all that, they'd gone on for years, you know. So it wasn't one warning sign a couple months before or a week before. It was very impulsive. And so, you know, I worry about others that have become very impulsive like that, and making sure we know what the cumulative effects of stress are and what the cumulative work of this job and other things that go on in our lives, how it affects us. Have 3 people you can call when you're in crisis or when things get bad. Have somebody you can call and talk to, whether it's a fellow fireman, whether it's a friend, whether it's a clergy or pastor. Have somebody you can talk to. Practice self-care, understanding what self-care is, journaling, writing, exercising, cooking, doing something that's just fun to relieve stress. The chiefs have to agree that behavioral health is a priority, and they're going to get it done for their firefighters, whether it's the free online training, whether it's having somebody come in, creating a peer support team. There's so many avenues out there to look at, but just doing something. You're not alone. And that was the biggest thing that ever got me through, was knowing that I was not alone. Like the issues that I was having were not me issues. Somebody else had those. Somebody else had worked through those. Somebody else was going through those probably at the same instance I was, or somewhere around the country, and I didn't even know it. Knowing that you were not alone, and knowing that there is help out there. There are phone numbers to call. There are help networks out there that will talk you down, talk you through things. There's somebody in your department that cares about you. There are people in your lives that care about you. Your story is not over just because of a bad day or a bad couple hours. There is help, and you've got to want the help, but once you get that and accept that, it's like a weight being lifted off your shoulders. You're in for some hard work, but it's such a rewarding experience. Because I am an attempt survivor doesn't mean that I'm done. You know, I can still relapse. I still have bad days. But knowing this, going to conferences, talking to the people after I give the conferences, and the ones that come up to me afterwards and say, this was me, or thank you, I needed to hear this. That the feeling that you get inside you is irreplaceable.
This should be the fabric. Our number one asset is firefighters, right? The fabric should be the general well-being of our individuals, and how do we create a 25 to 30-year plan so that they have a good quality of life and it doesn't lead to suicide.
And I think we can't forget, I mean, the people that we recruit and the people that are on our departments are resilient folks.
Absolutely.
They are tough men and women. They've been through a lot, they will be through a lot. So there are things we should learn from them. You know, how do they keep moving forward? There's a lot to learn, you know, because you would think for what we go through that everybody would be debilitated. And that's not the case. So
No,
what are
it's not the norm.
It's right. So what are the, you know, let's study them and learn from them as well.
I work with firemen that have PTSD and have drug and alcohol problems in treatment center. And I'm also involved in my department in helping with some other very brave men, creating some venues for our brothers and sisters who are hurting. We're trying to create mental health check-ins and some other stuff with the peer support group. And I really have nothing to lose and everything to gain. If I can get a message out to at least one. Today, I made a commitment to do this interview, but if not, I would be in St. Lucie at a funeral for a fireman that you would have never thought that this guy would kill himself. And his name bears repeating. It's David Dangerfield. He was a fire chief, very funny guy. He's a great dad, great husband. David Dangerfield, like almost every other suicide, doesn't have to happen. I believe that. I believe that. When I was going through my battles, I went from homicidal to suicidal frequently. The rumination that kept me up at night, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep, and I thought about what did I do to deserve this, and you know, when you live in a hopeless state like that, you don't, your best option looks like suicide. It's not a good option, but that's the state of mind that you're in. And we've had 2 other suicides in my department within the last year. And on top of that, we've had, I think in the combined area between Broward and Palm Beach County, 9 firefighter suicides in a 1-year period. I'm in a divorce, and I gotta move out of my house. The relationship, the woman I thought I was gonna grow old and die with, it's not happening. It was probably inevitable and it was probably predictable. I don't blame that on the fire service. But it was the divorce that actually got me into counseling with my kids. Guys very well said, you know, coincidentally, the importance of having those people that understand us in our field is everything. I don't need some chooch sitting there crying with tears coming down his ears because I'm telling him about, you know, this kid that I had to pull out of a fire, or the skin coming off of my gloves, or the smell of burning flesh, or what people look like when they're, you know, mutilated inside cars. I don't need to look at, you know, the person I'm talking to and they're crying. Because now I'm just thinking, how am I going to get out of here? When is this over? And am I paying for this, really? And he says to me in a counseling session with my kids, hey man, I'd like to see you next time alone, one-on-one. I'm thinking, yeah, sure, you know, no problem. He wants to know about the nasty calls, the bad calls, this and that. He asked me, what does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? Did you touch it? Did it have a taste? He's incorporating all my senses. I didn't realize what he was doing. When he did that, and I'm looking at him, I said, I want to punch this guy in the throat. I said, you want to know? I'm going to tell you. And jump in, because the f***ing water's deep, you know? I started telling him about things that I thought I was okay with. You know, I could see these kids' faces. I could hear their screams. And it wasn't just one call. It was, shit, man, I've been doing this for almost 29 years. A lot of calls. There's a lot of skeletons in that closet. Everybody's got it. It was just a bizarre set of circumstances how it all came about to me being diagnosed. And that was it. But you know what? It got me to where I am now. I am as whole as I'm ever going to be. None of us come into this great career and leave the way we came in. You're going to leave some of you here. You're going to have a hole. But the idea is to make yourself as whole as possible. And there's ways to do that. There's ways to, I'm living proof. But there's hope. I know it. I experienced it. I came out the other side of it, you know?
When we go into the fire, we go in with a buddy. That's so we could be in there as a team. In regards to mental and emotional health, we all have an effect. We don't have to go down the path of PTSD or depression or anxiety, but we all have symptomology. And we all handle it a little bit differently. We all have different coping skills. Some are good and some are bad, me included. And so what we need in regards to address behavioral health, stigma, suicide, and any other mental health issue is conversations.
The one thing that everybody in the fire service should know about suicide is that many, many, many people live through it every single day. These are not stories we tell, but these are stories that are true. For every person who dies by suicide, there are about 280 people who stare it down and live through it. And they get treatment, they get sober, they get out of toxic relationships, they get out of toxic work environments, they grow through it, they find spiritual awakening. Like, these stories are amazing. This is the narrative we need to flip when it comes to suicide. It can't all be about the tragedy, because that leaves us feeling helpless. We need to celebrate the resilience.
There are members of your department that have been there before, that have been in that dark place and have come through, that will be there to help you when you need it. You know, I've lost friends to suicide. I've lost friends that we wouldn't consider suicide, that drank themselves to death, that didn't take care of themselves. And I think it's because of the work that they do. And I think it's because they were afraid to ask for help. It's really hard to watch. It needs to stop. And we can stop it.
You matter. I promise you. Your passion for living will come back. And in order to get there, you've got to let someone else know. You got to let them know how you're feeling. So reach out.
I'm asking you, have the guts to ask the hard questions. And then listen.
If you're in a dark place, there is help available. Come out from behind the shadows. We're here to help.
Suicide does not take away the pain. It just shares it with the rest of us left behind.
Let's make sure that all firefighters have the resources to mitigate the crisis and emergency in mental health.
Remember, you are not alone. Your emotional immune system is just as important as your physical immune system.
I think of my dad every day and miss him more and more every day. Please make good choices.
Open your mouth, stick your hand out, ask for help, and reach out for somebody's hand, because there's somebody there to help you. You can't put a fire out alone. You can't fight this alone. You didn't get it alone. You got it over a long period of time. The help exists. I have been there. I know exactly what you're going through. It's not a lot of fun, but it's not something that you go around. It's something you go through.
Thank you.